Our moderator is Pallavi Kalita, Asia Lead at Business for Nature. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Hello. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the session on the role of businesses. Very happy to be moderating this session. But before I introduce you to our fantastic panelists and dive into the discussion, we would like to first hear from you. You will see QR. Can we have the poll QR code, please, on the screen? Yeah, so this is the same QR code which you used in the last panel discussion. So scan this QR code to respond to the question, where is your organization currently positioned on its nature positive journey? Are you just exploring? Have you made public commitments? Are you actively implementing, or is nature fully built into your financial strategy? Take a few minutes to respond to this question, and we'll come back to the responses at the end of the panel discussion. And while you respond to this question, let me tell you why this question matters. Every business, be it of any sector, size, and geography, depends on nature and its ecosystem services. The business case for nature action is really strong, as we heard in all the previous session and the discussions so far. So nature action delivers really key benefits for businesses. It helps you with better risk management, better brand reputation, better access to markets, finance, better regulatory positioning. So the question isn't whether you should be embedding nature as part of your business strategy, but the question is how fast can you embed nature as part of your business strategy to have a competitive edge. And there is a clear way in for doing that through 4 high-level actions. First, assess and measure your risk impacts and dependencies across your value chain. Second, based on this assessment, commit to setting transparent science-based targets. Third, transform your business operations and models and advocate for policy ambition. And finally, disclose on any material nature-related information throughout this journey to drive transparency and accountability. And the poll question that you just answered takes you through this entire journey. And businesses which are already taking these 4 key actions are also in a position to develop a credible nature strategy. And we are seeing this through Business for Nature's global business action campaign called It's Now for Nature, which encourages companies to develop and publish ambitious nature strategies. We have now close to 50 nature strategies as part of this campaign, and many of these companies are from Asia. We are seeing more than 700 companies committing to TNFD, and the majority are from Japan, which is commendable. We are seeing more and more companies reporting on CDP's water and forest targets. All of these companies are proving that nature action is simply good business action. Now, while this is commendable, I think we also have to be cognizant of the fact that the voluntary action by some of these leading companies is clearly not enough if we want to meet the Global Biodiversity Framework 2030 targets. To meet the GBF 2030 targets at the scale and speed needed, we also need to put in place the right policies, the right incentives, and an enabling policy environment. And this is where your role as businesses is really important. Policy will only shift when businesses also speak up. So as we head to COP17 later this year, this is an opportunity for businesses to work together with the government to ensure an enabling policy environment and to level the playing field for businesses. I'll leave you with that thought. And this morning, we will follow nature through the entire value chain. We have 5 business leaders, each holding a link to that value chain. So with that, let me introduce you to our fantastic panelists. First, we have Mr. Toshiro Mitsuyoshi, CEO, Sumitomo Forestry, a Japanese forestry and wood products company with a history spanning hundreds of years. Then we have Mr. Taro Kitabayashi, Representative Director and President, Chief Executive Officer, the Norinchukin Bank, Japan's central bank for its agriculture, forestry, and fisheries cooperative. Then we have Mr. Dave Harris, Managing Director and CEO, Australian Agricultural Company, Australia's largest integrated cattle and beef producer. Then we have Miss Esther N, Chief Sustainability Officer, City Developments Limited, a leading global real estate company based in Singapore, built on the ethos conserving as we construct. And last but not the least, we have Mr. Junro Ito, Executive Chair, 7&I Holdings, one of the world's largest retail groups, home to 7-Eleven and thousands of stores. Now, let's start with the discussion. First, I want to start with something simple and more personal. What was the moment you realized nature was your business problem, not just an environmental one? And this is a question I want to open to everyone in the panel. Toshiro-san, maybe I'll start with you.
Hi, Sumitomo.
My name is Mitsuyoshi from Sumitomo Forestry. To that question that has been just asked, in 1985 I joined the company Sumitomo Forestry. And back then, from Beshi of Shikoku to Kochi Prefecture, I had an experience of hiking in the mountains and also planting of trees. That was the very first time I realized there was a close link between the nature and business. Sumitomo Forestry was established in 1691 when Beshi copper mine was started its operation. Due to overlogging and due to air pollution from copper smelting, the mountains surrounding the mine became barren. Back then, there was no word of CSR, but the company started planting trees, and we had a major reforestation plan. We were able to recover a green in the trees. And I was able to walk around the mountains in my training process. I was able to understand the importance of nature in business. Thank you. My name is Kitabayashi from Norinchukin Bank. The forestry, agriculture, and fisheries, which is our client base, has enjoyed benefits from the nature. And at times we face the difficulties of nature in our business. But having said, since 2000, people working in the agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, they have huge concerns to the future of their business operations. So nature is not just environmental issues, but for us, it is a major business challenge for us.
For having me. Firstly, I must say that I think I've been extremely privileged to be born into agriculture, and that I'm extremely passionate about the role that it has to play in society. I've worked in agriculture my whole life, and I'm extremely passionate about how the different ecosystems deliver productivity for our businesses. I believe the first time that I truly realised nature was a business problem, not just an environmental one, was as a boy, when I understood and saw the productivity benefits that always came from whatever living animal or plant that I was managing, from the places with the best environmental surroundings. And so productivity being key to having a good natural ecosystem. At AACO, we manage around 6.5 million hectares of Australia's land mass. And so for us, land and the ecosystems are our greatest asset. And like I said before, when I was a boy, they are our largest productive contributor to our business. More recently, another example has been when we have moved business models slightly from purely primary production to that of a branded beef strategy, trying to deliver high quality beef to our customers around the world 365 days a year. That has really heightened our understanding of how important it is for us to have healthy ecosystems and a positive effect on nature. So for me and for the Australian Agricultural Company, it is not about nature or the business, it is the business.
Hello, thank you very much for having me all the way from Singapore. And well, when we actually started in 1995 until now, I wouldn't call it an aha moment. It's more like an evolution of getting to know more about the impact of the construction industry and also building management. Building sector account for almost 40% of greenhouse gas emission, consume about 1/3 of water, and extract 50% of natural resources. So the more we know about the data, the more determined and aggressive, I think, we have to set targets to embrace nature. The world will not achieve net zero without bringing in nature-based solutions.
セブン&アイ・ホールディングスの伊藤
My name is Junro Ito from Seven & I Holdings. Thank you very much for having me. So, the first time I realized that there was a close link between the business and the nature, I realized that more than 10 years ago. Our group company, in the supermarket business, when I was talking with someone who was in charge of seafood, said that she is finding it more and more difficult to purchase tuna fish from global markets. Because of economic reasons, emerging countries saw increase in population. Since there was an increase in income, we were not able to compete against them. That is also true, but even more than that, the natural resources, including fish and the seaweed, is extremely limited. That is what I realized. And since then, we are doing business based on the blessings from our nature. So therefore, we know that environmental issues are not just environmental issues, but directly linked to our business.
Emphasizing that nature is everyone's business. Toshiro-san, my first question is to you. Sumitomo Forestry champions the wood cycle. From a corporate strategy perspective, how does a comprehensive understanding of nature-related dependencies lead your company to better manage global forests? And how do you ensure your sustainable timber operations actively contribute towards GBF targets while revitalizing rural economies?
はい、私どものですね、2000
Yeah, so 2030, towards 2030, we have a long-term vision. At the core of it is, as you mentioned, a wood cycle initiative. So basically, we do forest management, and then we harvest high-quality timber that's produced, and also the wooden constructions, and also recycled materials we use for biomass generation. And also we try to add value to cellulose by creating sustainable aviation fuel. And also we focus on long-lived product, wooden-based plastic. We at the research stage on it. So by making sure this wood cycle operates properly, we can create value to society and also to people, and also economic value as a corporation. So these are the three pillars, what we want to achieve. Well, just the conserving forests as they are is not the only nature positive way. You have to sometimes plant trees, and other times you harvest and then contribute to economy, forestry. So we do both, we do all. And the forest, trees absorb a lot of CO2 and fix it in the trees. And then by creating and increasing the number of wooden constructions, then it's a good way to fix CO2 for a long time as a carbon sink. So that's value. Trees are the same as humans. after 50 or 60 years, their capacity to absorb CO2 will be lessened. So if it's a cedar tree, we cut them and replant new trees. If it's cypress, 60, 70 years, we cut them and then plant new seedlings. And then the logged trees we use for construction. That's sustainable. So wood cycle is a model to balance nature and economy at the same time. Of course, we have protected forests and economic forests. In both of these types of forests, we have to make sure that the biodiversity will be enhanced rather than damaged, which is a key focus for us. We will maintain focus on it too.
Thank you so much for sharing the wood cycle philosophy and how it can benefit both ecosystems and the rural economy, and also for emphasizing the importance of long horizon thinking. I think it's important to, of course, reduce harm in the short term, which is really crucial. But if we are serious about meeting the GBF 2030 targets, we also need to set long-term nature restoration targets and commitments. Taro-san, my next question is to you. As a financial institution with deep roots in agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, Norinchukin has introduced the concept of food and agricultural value chain transition as a key pillar of its climate and nature strategy. So what does this transition mean in practice? Why is nature such an important part of this? And how is your bank working with stakeholders across the value chain to make it a reality?
ありがとうございます。農林中金ご存知でない方もいらっしゃいますので。
I don't think everyone knows us Norinchukin, so let me introduce us briefly. It's a cooperative of forestry players and also farmers. So through finance, through agriculture, forestry, and fishery, we contribute to society. So we get deposits, and then of course, deposits, the money comes from the agricultural and forestry operations. And then we utilize the fund that we invest in various fields, both domestic and international. And also, so our investment also impacts and depend on nature and nature-based operation. So in terms of operation and fundraising, we are very connected to nature in both ways. Okay, so the food and agriculture value chain transition you asked about. Well, from the standpoint of sustainable growth of agriculture, fishery, and forestry, I think we have two key important points. First of all, we say that these industries should grow, but we should not limit the focus not only on these industries, but we have to have a holistic view on ecosystem, not just the production in agriculture, forestry, and fishery, and processing, distribution, and also financing. We encompass all these when we call it value chain.
And the other point is a transition. Climate and nature are not independent themes, but rather things like food security and also revitalizing local economy. Just like them, we should have an extensive perspective on nature. And as you know, nature capital is a foundation of various economic and social activities. So therefore, it is important to capture those issues as isolated issues, but we should try to understand the total picture as well. I think we need both perspectives. And we call that transition. So our the role of our financial institution is to support the transition, provide financial services to support the transition. And with this backdrop, let me explain to you the specific initiatives that we're implementing. So I would like to share with you a case in Kyushu. We are working together with we are supporting the trading of biodiversity credit. When you say carbon credit, it is usually related to climate change. But the buyer, which is an alcohol provider, since their business model heavily depends on the water resources of the local area, they believe that it is very important for the sustainability of their business to support the water source of the area. So by integrating climate and nature, not only focusing on carbon sequestration absorption, that will lead to a restoration of water, so that which should be converted into various values of forests. So with regards to the specific initiatives that we're implementing, Climate and Nature Report we have published at the end of June it has all the information that you may need.
Emphasizing the importance of aligning on the climate and nature agenda, and then we can co-maximize the benefits for both. Dave, let me come to you now. Managing roughly 1% of Australia's landmass puts ACO at the front line of land stewardship. As a primary producer, how are you incorporating nature into your corporate strategy? And how does investing in nature within your care protect your business and downstream supply chain partners?
Thank you for the question, and you're right. Protecting nature for us is core to our strategy. And so what we've done is be very intentional that what has in the past been referred to as sustainability, or in this context being nature positive, is not a separate part of our business. We're incorporating it as the core ethos and philosophy of what we do and how we do it. So much so that, like I said, it's in our vision and it is core. It is not a separate part of the business. It is how we do business, if that makes sense. I can't reiterate enough how deliberate we have been with this in the work that in our most recent strategy that we've completed as well. I think the other part to your question is about the why, and that's building, and we've heard it a little bit more already this morning in other people's conversations, is about business resilience. We are a business that is 202 years old, and whilst that may not be a lot here in Japan, in Australia that is very significant. And it has been on the back of nature that we've been able to sustain that 202 years and the productivity that I talked to earlier. It is super important for us to be around for the next 202 years, that we continue to invest in this resilience. And that is why it is so core for us investing at the moment. One of the things that we're also doing at the moment, working with some of our partners, and we've also heard this spoken of a little bit today, is about how do we measure these things. And so we've been on a journey for the past 2 to 3 years with a business called Accounting for Nature, undertaking basically a baseline of our entire natural capital footprint across that 6.4 million hectares to understand the highest value areas of that natural capital, to get an ecological condition score of those ecosystems so that we can really understand how they are positioned today, and then truly understand what effects we have on those different ecosystems, how we can improve those ecosystems, but also link it to those productivity measures that I spoke to at the start about why it is a business problem, not an environmental problem. And so we think that's a really exciting piece of work for us that has taken a long time, and it is an example of significant investment that doesn't show a lot for many years, but looking at the longer term horizon, like we've been speaking of, none of these things will happen tomorrow, but we are very committed to getting a better outcome for that natural asset base and capital asset that I spoke to there before. And so with those verified decisions, and Marco spoke to it earlier, how do we understand, how do we have those ecological condition scores, or understanding the quality of our ecosystems in a format that is helpful to others, will be extremely beneficial to others as well as our business. So in short, I reiterate, nature is part of our business.
Thank you so much, Dave, for clearly demonstrating that nature is the business model for ECHO and how your nature strategy has built the long-term resilience of your company. Esther, coming to you now. Thank you for your patience. Taking the raw materials and financing we discussed in this first set of questions now into the built environment. CDL treats nature as a financially material asset. How does embedding a nature-positive strategy into high-density urban environments not only mitigate climate issues like urban heat, but also actively align your real estate operations with sustainable supply chains and forward-thinking investors?
Thank you for the questions. I think before I go into just specifically raw material, I would like to, say that the built environment is very close to our heart, right? We all live in your home. We work in office buildings, we study in school, we use hotels, facilities like that. And everyone actually has an impact on building performance. And raw material actually is a very crucial part, and not just a procurement decision, but it reflects a company's overall business strategy, the systemic change of how we embrace, alternative sourcing, how we purchase, what we purchase, where we purchase from, all have a very high carbon and nature footprint. So this is actually embraced into our overall strategy. We started in 1995, I mentioned, and we have actually the 4 I pillars that I can explain on how we tackle the raw materials. And the first I is actually integration. It's the decisions that made from, integrating from the board level to the top management to rank and file, and horizontally cutting across all operational units. And in a big circle, actually include all our value chain, our architect, designer, and engineer, main contractor, subcontractor, supply chain, and all the way down. And then the second I is about innovation. And now we are in an era of, climate emergency. Just mitigation of risk is not sufficient. It's like World Cup football, you need to go, risk innovation, risk adaptation, looking for more effective solutions, practices, and technologies are very important, including nature-based solutions. And then what we look at is actually how to reduce carbon and climate impact using technology. Innovations such as like wood, we talk about wood, we focus a lot more on cleaner concrete, cement, those are our top materials, and steel. And these are all in a stage, in a progressive, work in progress, because steel and cement actually account for almost 16% of total greenhouse gas emission. If we can solve these 2 problems, we can really make a big leap forward. Literally, we can't build without cement, concrete, stones, and steel, yeah? And wood is very important. We actually use engineered wood, cross-laminated timber, which is endorsed by Nature Barcode from the most sustainable wood source. And we built the first sustainability academy, not just net zero, but using CLT, cross-laminated timber. So this is innovation. The third I is about investment. And technologies and solutions are available, but they are not free, not cheap. So you need to mobilize capital. And we also mobilized, almost $11 billion worth of green financing since 2017. We launched the first green bond. And after that, we actually launched quite a number of different green financing and also sustainability-linked loan that tag to our target of net zero, as well as nature-based solutions and TNFD targets as well. So mobilizing capital can enable action. Talking is free, but applying technology solutions and alternative better raw materials is not free. So we need to mobilize capital, attract investment. And the last I is about impact. Whatever action we take or we don't take, businesses have an impact on the environment, on the climate, and on the future as well. So we need to measure. Without measuring, you don't know your impact. Only with measuring, you know what are the gaps and where are the areas that you can innovate. So the 4 I, very important to integrate nature and climate into our strategy, and innovate, invest, and also impact tracking and reporting. The 4I, very important. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, and for emphasizing once again the importance of assessing not just your impacts, but also your dependencies on nature, and also proving that nature commitments can actually unlock financing. Last but not the least, Junro-san. Seven & I operates at the very end of the value chain, interacting with tens of millions of consumers worldwide daily. Through your Green Challenge 2050, how do you take the sustainable strategies of primary producers and developers on this stage and turn them into trusted, nature-positive choices for everyday shopper?
Thank you very much for the question. The 7-I has 22,000 stores in Japan, and we have 87,000 stores worldwide. We have 7-Eleven stores. And in the case of Japan, we have 22 million shoppers coming to our stores around the world. 87,000 visitors come to our stores to do shopping. So we have a huge amount of contacts with the consumers. And as was mentioned earlier, towards 2050, we have challenging targets, CO2 emissions reductions, reduction in the use of plastic, a reduction in food loss, and also what is directly linked with nature positive, sustainable procurement target has already been set for 2050. And you asked a question about the strategy and the passion of primary producers. How can we communicate their strategy to our customers through our contacts with the consumers? So for one, we have coffee called 7 Coffee. We launched that product 10 years ago. We have already sold 9 billion cups of coffee in our stores. And as part of that initiative, we are using nitrogen to roast coffee to reduce the impact on the environment. It is a bit pricey, but Dave had that coffee, and he said that it could be sold in the Australian market as well. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to deploy this business around the world. This coffee, if one person drinks 2 cups of this coffee, in a year, we'll be able to have equivalent impact on the CO2 emissions to a tree. So we are talking about nitrogen roasting as well. Hydrogen roasting, and that is one way to reduce our impacts on the environment. One more initiative related to local community. We are talking about local production and local consumption, and we are also providing food-related education to school children. People who are in development of food visit elementary schools located in the city of Kumamoto, and we provide education to share information about what's been produced in Kumamoto area, and also talk about food-related issues such as reduced or decline in consumption of milk. And this is not related to the environment, but school children are eating less breakfast. So we are also trying to educate children that it is better for them to eat breakfast. And we are also working together with school children to develop food. For example, use foods local produced to come up with a menu so that they can be involved in the menu development process. And those are actually made into products and are sold in stores. And the children are involved in selling those products. By vitalizing food-related education, we are trying to educate them the importance of environment. It is not just limited to the Kumamoto area, but we would like to expand this initiative to be implemented in all the stores in Japan. I'm sure that in the audience we have some employees who have provided this education to the school children. So we are utilizing contacts with the consumers to deliver a message on the importance of the environment. And as a result, we are hoping that we will be able to change their behavior so they will be purchasing more environmentally friendly products. And that would lead to changes in the society, and I'm hoping that that would lead to realization of sustainable society.
Much, and thank you for the delicious coffee as well, and most importantly your efforts towards making sustainability the default choice for consumers and not the premium choice. And this is an important behavioral shift that we need. We have very little time, and we have a few more things that we would like to discuss. So we've heard about the nature journey across all these different companies, the business action part. Now let's move to the policy aspects, because business action and policy ambition has to move hand in hand if we want to create a resilient economy. So very quickly, maybe this time I'll start the other way around with Junro-san. What is the most overlooked nature-related risk or opportunity in your link of the value chain, and how can stronger policy frameworks help your sector move from voluntary commitments to transparent corporate accountability? So in simple, how can better policy turn promises into real accountability?
はい、なるほど。私たち
Yes, in our case, so 7-Eleven are small stores. A small outlet have 2,500 or 3,000 commodities we sell, and the supply chain is really vast. So we conduct a CSR audit to go to Tier 1 suppliers. For Tier 1 suppliers, we have been conducting a CSR audit for many years, but Tier 2 and Tier 3, we cannot grasp all the information about them. So assume, okay, so we go along with the TMFD framework, and then we perform analysis so that in the future we can identify risks in the future. So this time coffee is seen as one selected item for this analysis. And we created the optimistic scenario and the pessimistic scenario and performed analysis. This is just one coffee item. This analysis takes a long time. And in order to resolve problems that we found, we really have to work with the primary suppliers. So TMFD initiative, I think this has to be mandated in the future.
Accountability is very, very important. And what drives change immediately for businesses is when the government asks you to do something, you have to do it, because that is a license to operate. As listed company in more than 30 over country has already adopted, pledge to support ISSB, and with the climate focus S2 involving the scope 3. Supply chain is very important. So that's why we have already engaged our supplier more than 3 years ago to educate them, engage them to pick up how to learn about carbon reporting and accounting. And if we can apply this mandatory carbon reporting to nature, I think that is really going to move the needle very fast. And very glad that ISSB has already, announced that the TNFD is going to be a practice statement, which hopefully it will be a long-term, in a pathway to future standards as well. And I think at CDL, we actually started sustainability reporting since 2008. We have published 19 sustainability report. And 3 years ago, thanks to TNFD, they rolled out the final framework in September 2023, and we published it in 6 months' time in 2024. We published the very first TNFD report in Southeast Asia. And I think reporting is very important, not just because policymakers ask you to do it. It does have business case, if I can share some actual examples, that how measuring can help us, identify innovations, solutions, is like circularity solutions. That is what we actually, through LEAP, which is actually locate the interdependency of our business with nature, and vice versa. And E is about how to evaluate the possibility of risk and opportunity. A is to assess the possible financial impact, and P is really to prepare and report it. And because we know that heat is actually a major challenge to people, for country like us next to the equator. So heat stress is one of our top priority. And we actually find a nature-based solutions that can work. About 2 years ago, we decided to actually adapt the Miyawaki microforest concept, which is originated from Japan. And it's very suitable for Singapore, being small. So we actually apply the microforest, and we want to be scientific. We install bioacoustic sensors inside and outside the forest, which is actually located 2,800 square feet just outside our mall. And within 1 year, we actually have data to prove that it can reduce temperature by 5 degrees within the forest, outside by 4 degrees. Urban heat island effect can raise up to 7 degrees hotter. So heat stress is now feeling it, the whole world is feeling it. So for us who provide, commercial space, living space, finding nature-based solutions that can effectively cool the environment through greening is a very great innovation that we learn from actually adopting TNFD. Yeah.
Thank you, Esther. Dave.
I think from a policy perspective, what we're looking for is flexible policy that enables agile ecosystem management. And so all of us in the room today will appreciate that no ecosystem is the same day after day, and no biodiversity footprint or no piece of land or nature that we're operating in is going to be the same day on day. So we need some flexibility so that we can move with how those environments are showing up on the day, because what we are starting to see is when blanket restrictive practices get put on to businesses, they will often deliver what can actually be perverse outcomes for biodiversity in particular. And so there is an example in Australia at the moment where a well-meaning piece of legislation, the EPBC Act, has a very blanket restrictive approach, and we think in some circumstances it will actually lead to poorer management outcomes solely aimed at meeting policy requirements that then lead to poorer biodiversity outcomes. And so I think whilst I appreciate it's complicated, we really need to work with policymakers to give us the opportunity to be flexible in how we operate in these ecosystems so that we can deliver positive nature outcomes, and that's obviously an extremely important part of that, but also have some flexibility to work with what we're playing with.
Thank you.
はい、私たちの
Thank you very much. From our perspective, within the food value chain, what is being most overlooked, risks and opportunities, is actually between the consumers and the producers. In the area of agriculture, forestry, and fisheries, the use of water resources, impact on the biodiversity, there are various nature risks involved. But on the other hand, to address those risks, regenerative agriculture or sustainable fisheries, various initiatives are being implemented, but values that are implemented are not returned to the operators as benefits or as profit. So what is being overlooked is not nature itself, but rather the value of initiatives that are being implemented. It should be shared among the value chain. I think that is a missing part. So in that case, disclosures and traceability, by having a common or standard, we'll be able to compare different initiatives among different companies, and that would lead to appropriate evaluation by the market on the initiatives that are being implemented by the businesses. So TNFD has making proposals on the index of measuring the initiatives. And I think it is we are the very first financial institutions to come up with, to disclose based on the index for endangered species. Such a progress or implementation of such initiatives that would accelerate the sustainability, and also we would like to continue with this kind of initiative. Thank you very much. Forest can generate values, conservation, of biodiversity, also to prevent landslides and so on. So that is a value of natural capital, and that such value need to be properly measured and properly evaluated and assessed. I think we need that. So we should have a common language established to be able to communicate correctly the value. So we are a member of International Forestry Sustainability Council, and through their activities, we are working together with various forestry business operators to work on a project which is supported by TNFD as well. We try to visualize. We need to come up with the measurements and indexes to do a proper assessment.
Clear call to action. I hope these are conveyed to the government representatives as well. Very quickly, I know we are over time, but I'll just take maybe 1 more minute to just get back to the poll results. I'm not sure if we can have the results on the screen. Otherwise, I do have the responses. So the highest response to the question, where is your organization currently positioned on its nature positive journey? 30% of the room said exploring, so just beginning to understand, and 13% around endorsements, setting commitments, 18% at around acting, so setting the targets and implementing. So clearly the ambition is there in the room. So just as a wrap up, one quick advice that you would give this room as an advice to begin or advance their nature journey. Toshiro-san, I will start with you.
そうですね。住友林業は大造林計画100
So Sumitomo Forestry started 130 years ago, massive reforesting. So we have been doing nature positive in that way. So first of all, we have to understand our operations' impact on biodiversity to come up with appropriate actions. That's the start of everything. So we are a financial institution. So as I said, we are going to support individual initiatives, and also we have to optimize. Overall optimization is also what we have to do.
And invest in what it could be, not what it is.
Well, I hope the 30% who voted for exploration can speed it up, because the planet can't wait, and the loss of nature, loss of biodiversity can't wait. So we need to speed up, and don't let perfection, slow down your progress. Just take action and drive change. Along the way, you can find even more solutions that can return value to your business resilience and create value for you.
私たち先ほども
As I said before, we have lots of touch points with our customers, but we alone cannot achieve anything. So with manufacturers and primary industry producers and the local communities, it's very important that we look forward to work with all these stakeholders. So if you have any information, proposals, and encouragement, we welcome.
The journey, and absolutely we have the resources, tools in place now, and let perfect not be the enemy of good, and let's take the leap of faith and start our nature journey. Thank you so much. A big round of applause for our fantastic panelists.